Some footballers overcome poverty. Some overcome rejection. Luka Modrić had to overcome something far worse: war. Not the metaphorical kind, not the struggle that comfortable people describe when life gets difficult. Real war. Bullets, bombs, death. The kind that kills your family, burns your home, and forces you to flee with nothing but the clothes on your back. Luka Modrić was born on September 9, 1985, in Zadar, Croatia. Though back then, it was still part of Yugoslavia, a country that would soon tear itself apart in one of Europe's bloodiest conflicts since World War II. His early childhood was simple but happy. His father Stipe worked at an aircraft factory. His mother, Radojka, worked in textiles. They weren't wealthy, but they had enough. A small apartment in Zadar, food on the table, a community of neighbors who looked out for each other. But Luka's real home wasn't in the city. It was in the mountains, in a tiny village called Modrici, the village his family came from, the village that gave him his surname. His grandfather lived there, Luka Modrić Sr., the man Luka was named after, a shepherd who tended sheep in the rugged hills of the Velebit Mountains, a quiet, gentle man who loved his grandson more than anything in the world. Every summer, young Luka would leave Zadar and spend months with his grandfather in Modrici. No electricity, no running water, no television or toys, just mountains, sheep, and endless open space. His grandfather taught him about life, how to care for animals, how to read the weather, how to appreciate simplicity. They'd walk for hours through the hills, the old man pointing out plants, telling stories, sharing wisdom accumulated over 7 decades. But most importantly, his grandfather taught him football. There was no proper pitch in Modrici. No grass field, no goals, no lines. Just a small clearing among the rocks where shepherds had kicked balls for generations. Luka and his grandfather would play there for hours, using stones as goalposts, playing on terrain so rough and uneven that every pass was an adventure. Football isn't about perfect conditions, his grandfather would say, watching young Luka dribble around rocks and stumps. Football is about adaptation, about making the impossible work. Luka was tiny, smaller than other kids his age, skinny to the point of fragile, but he was quick, clever, and he had something special, a first touch so soft that the ball seemed to stick to his foot, even on the rocky, uneven ground. Those summers in Modrici, playing football with his grandfather among the sheep and mountains, were the happiest times of Luka's young life. Simple, pure, perfect. He didn't know that war was coming, that everything was about to change, that he'd never play football with his grandfather again. Sometimes the purest happiness comes right before the worst pain. That's how life tests what you're made of.
In 1991, when Luka was 6 years old, Yugoslavia began to collapse. Slovenia and Croatia declared independence. Serbia, controlling the Yugoslav army, responded with violence. The war reached Zadar first. Serbian forces, positioned in the hills surrounding the city, began shelling. Not military targets, civilian areas, apartments, schools, markets. The city Luka called home became a war zone. Air raid sirens became part of daily life. The sound that makes your blood freeze, your stomach drop, your legs want to run even though there's nowhere to go. Luka learned to recognize the whistle of incoming shells, learned to count seconds between the sound and the explosion, learned to tell which were close and which were distant. His father joined the Croatian army. One day he was working at the factory. The next day, he was holding a rifle, defending his country. Luka's mother was left alone with 3 children in a city under siege. But the worst was yet to come. The war spread to the mountains, to the small villages where people had lived peacefully for centuries, to Modric. In December 1991, Serbian forces attacked the village. They came with tanks, with soldiers, with orders to cleanse the area of Croatian civilians. It wasn't a battle, it was a massacre. Luka's grandfather was there, Luka Modrić Sr., the gentle shepherd who taught his grandson to play football among the rocks. He was 71 years old, unarmed, no threat to anyone. They executed him, shot him, and left his body in the village. They burned Modric to the ground. Every house, every building, everything that generations of families had built, turned it to ash and rubble. News reached Zadar slowly. Luka's mother received word that her father-in-law was dead, that the village was destroyed, that Luka's grandfather, the boy's best friend, his teacher, his hero, was gone. How do you tell a 6-year-old child that his grandfather has been murdered, that the place where he was happiest has been destroyed, that war has taken everything? Luka's mother tried to explain. Young Luka didn't fully understand. He kept asking when they could visit grandfather again, when they could go back to Modric to play football. The answer was never. They could never go back. His grandfather was never coming back. War doesn't just kill people. It kills childhood. It kills innocence. It kills the belief that the world is safe.
Zadar wasn't safe anymore. The shelling intensified. Serbian forces completely surrounded the city, cutting off escape routes. Apartments were hit daily. People died in their homes, in the streets, doing ordinary things like buying bread or walking to school. The Croatian government set up refugee centers for families whose homes had been destroyed or who needed safer shelter. One of these was Hotel Kolovare, a once pleasant seaside hotel that became home to hundreds of displaced families. Luka's family moved there in 1992. He was 7 years old. Hotel Kolovare wasn't a hotel anymore, it was a refugee camp. Dozens of families crammed into small rooms, shared bathrooms, minimal food, no privacy. The constant sound of other people's crying, arguing, grieving. Luka, his mother, and his siblings lived in one small room. His father was away fighting. They didn't know if he was alive or dead. Communication was sporadic at best. Days would pass, sometimes weeks, without word. The hotel was near the coast, and on quiet days you could hear the sea. But quiet days were rare. More often you heard artillery fire, explosions, sirens, the sounds of a city dying. For a 7-year-old boy, this was normal. This was life. He didn't remember peace clearly enough to miss it properly. War was just the way the world was. But he had football. In the parking lot of Hotel Kolovare, refugee kids played. With whatever ball they could find, usually a half-deflated one, patched repeatedly, taped together to keep it usable. On cracked concrete between parked cars, they played. It was their escape. For those hours when they kicked the ball around, they weren't refugees. They weren't children living in a war zone. They were footballers. They were normal kids playing a normal game. Luka was the smallest kid there, always the smallest. Other boys were bigger, stronger, could run faster and kick harder. But Luka had something they didn't: vision. Even at 7, 8 years old, he saw the game differently. He saw passes before they happened. He understood space, movement, timing in ways that couldn't be taught. And he had his first touch, that magical ability to control any ball, no matter how bad, on any surface, no matter how rough, a gift from those summers playing with his grandfather on rocky mountain clearings. An older man lived at Hotel Kolovare, Tomislav Basic, a former football coach whose own life had been destroyed by the war. He noticed Luka immediately. "That small kid," he told other parents, "watch him, he's special. The ball does what he wants." Basic started organizing proper training sessions in the parking lot of Hotel Kolovare, teaching these refugee children not just to kick a ball around, but to play real football. Luka absorbed everything: tactics, positioning, technique. He was tiny, but he was smart. His football intelligence was remarkable. "Luka," Basic told him, "you're too small to be a footballer. Everyone will tell you that. But if you can make the ball do what others can't, if you can see things before they happen, size doesn't matter." Life in Hotel Kolovare was hard. Food was rationed, space was limited, privacy didn't exist. The war seemed endless. But Luka had football, and football gave him hope that life could be something other than this. When everything is taken from you, the smallest joys become everything. A deflated ball in a parking lot becomes a palace.
The war eventually ended in 1995, not with victory parades and celebrations, but with exhaustion, with international pressure, with too many dead and too much destroyed. Croatia was independent, but broken. Cities needed rebuilding. Families needed healing. Life needed restarting. Luka's family moved back to Zadar, not to their old apartment, it had been damaged, to a different place. His father came home from the war, changed, quieter, carrying trauma he'd never fully discuss, but alive. They were alive. In a war that killed over 20,000 people, they were lucky. Luka was 10 years old. He'd spent crucial years of his childhood in a war zone, in a refugee hotel, playing football on broken concrete to escape reality. Now he wanted to play football seriously. He joined NK Zadar, the local team's youth academy. But there was a problem. Actually, two problems. He was tiny and he was weak. Croatian youth football in the late 1990s was physical. Big kids dominated. Coaches valued size, strength, speed, things you could see immediately. Luka had none of that. At 10, 11, 12 years old, he looked years younger than his teammates. But he could play. His technique was extraordinary. His vision was exceptional. His first touch was magical. Anyone who watched him carefully could see he had something special. Dinamo Zagreb, Croatia's biggest club, heard about him, sent scouts to watch. They saw a tiny kid who nonetheless stood out in every match. They offered him a spot in their academy. Luka was 12 years old. Dinamo Zagreb was in the capital, over 250 kilometers from Zadar. It meant leaving home, living away from his family in the club's youth dormitory, starting over in a new city. His parents were torn. He was so young, so small. But this was his dream. This was his chance. "Go," his father said. "We survived a war so you could have opportunities. Take this one." Luka moved to Zagreb, and reality hit immediately. Dinamo's academy was full of Croatia's best young players. Kids from football families. Kids who'd trained in proper facilities their whole lives. Kids who were bigger, faster, stronger than him. The coach's assessment was brutal. Great technique, but too small, too weak, won't survive professional football. Maybe he'll grow, probably not. They put him in teams with younger kids because he was the same size as them. They didn't think he'd make it. They kept him around because his skills were undeniable, but they didn't really believe. Luka heard the whispers, saw the doubt, felt the lack of faith. Every day was a fight to prove he belonged. Every training session was a test of whether his skills could overcome his size. He was homesick, desperately. He missed his family, missed Zadar, cried himself to sleep some nights in the dormitory, but he didn't quit. He'd survived a war. He'd lost his grandfather. He'd lived in a refugee hotel. Compared to that, doubting coaches were nothing. They measured me by my height and found me lacking, but they forgot to measure my heart.
For 3 years, Luka fought, training harder than anyone, staying late to practice, coming early to work on his weaknesses. He couldn't make himself taller, but he could make himself faster, more technical, more intelligent. At 15, he got his chance. Dinamo's youth team was in a tournament. They were losing. The coach, desperate, put Luka in, the tiny kid who wasn't supposed to amount to much. Luka changed the game, not with size or strength, but with intelligence, with passes that split defenses, with movement that created space, with a football brain that was years ahead of his body. Dinamo won, and the coaches started paying attention differently. Maybe size didn't matter as much as they thought. Maybe this tiny kid had something more valuable than height. Maybe they'd been measuring wrong. By 16, Luka was in Dinamo Zagreb's first team, the youngest player, still the smallest, still hearing doubts, but playing, actually playing professional football. His debut came in 2003. He was 17. The stadium wasn't full. Croatian football was still rebuilding after the war, but for Luka, it might as well have been the World Cup final. This was it. The dream he'd held on to through war, through refugee life, through years of doubt. He played 30 minutes, did well, showed glimpses of his quality. Over the next 2 seasons, he played more, became a regular, became important. At 18, he was one of Dinamo Zagreb's key players. The tiny kid who wasn't supposed to make it had made it. But Croatia was too small for him. His talent was too obvious. Europe's big clubs were watching. In 2008, Tottenham Hotspur came calling, the English Premier League, one of the world's biggest stages. £16.5 million, a record transfer fee for Croatian football. Luka was 22 years old. He was leaving Croatia for London, leaving the country he'd fought through a war to build for a chance at the highest level. His father pulled him aside before he left. "Remember Modric," he said. "Remember your grandfather. Remember what you survived. If you could survive that, you can survive anything." Success isn't about being the biggest or the strongest. It's about refusing to quit when everyone says you should. Luka Modrić arrived in London in summer 2008 with massive expectations. £16.5 million was serious money for Tottenham. The media scrutinized him immediately, and they weren't impressed. He was 5'8", 172 centimeters, about 146 pounds, 66 kilograms. In the Premier League, the most physical league in the world, he looked like a child. Commentators questioned whether he could handle it. His first season was difficult, really difficult. Premier League football was faster, more physical, more intense than anything in Croatia. He got knocked off the ball constantly. He struggled with the pace. He looked overwhelmed. British newspapers were brutal. After Tottenham's poor start to the season, the Times ran a poll. Who was the worst signing of the season? Luka Modrić actually won the poll for worst transfer of the year. Headlines called him a waste of money, a mistake, too small for the Premier League. Tottenham fans started to doubt. Online forums questioned why the club had spent so much on someone so underwhelming. Luka read the criticism, heard the doubts, felt the disappointment.
And for a moment, he wondered if they were right. If maybe the Premier League was too much for him. If maybe his height and size really were insurmountable obstacles. Then he remembered hiding from artillery shells, remembered his grandfather's death, remembered living in Hotel Kolovare, remembered every coach who said he was too small, remembered surviving when survival seemed impossible. "I survived a war," he told his wife Vanya. "I survived being a refugee. I can survive bad press." He trained harder, watched more video, adapted his game, learned to release the ball quicker, move smarter, avoid physical confrontations he couldn't win, used his brain to compensate for his size. Slowly, gradually, he improved. By his second season, he was playing better. By his third season, he was playing brilliantly. His vision, his passing, his ability to control the midfield, undeniable. Tottenham fans went from doubting him to loving him. "Modric, Modric," echoed around White Hart Lane. The worst signing of the year had become their best player. By 2012, he was Tottenham's star, one of the Premier League's best midfielders, and Real Madrid, the biggest club in the world, wanted him. Let them call you the worst. Let them doubt you. Then prove them so wrong, they forget they ever doubted you.
Real Madrid, Los Blancos, the club of Alfredo Di Stefano, Ferenc Puskás, Zinedine Zidane, Cristiano Ronaldo, the most successful club in football history. They paid 40 million euros for Luka Modrić in 2012. And the doubts started immediately, again. Real Madrid fans gathered outside the club's training facility to protest the signing. They held up signs, "We don't need Modric." They wanted bigger names, more famous players, Galacticos. Spanish newspapers questioned the transfer. 40 million euros for a small midfielder from Tottenham, when they could have signed someone more exciting? Even Modric's first press conference was awkward. Journalists asked pointed questions. Why should Madrid fans accept you? How will you handle the pressure? Do you think you're good enough for this club? His first season was difficult. Real Madrid was a circus, massive egos, constant media scrutiny, impossible expectations. Luka struggled to adapt. He was benched. He was criticized. Fans whistled at him, actually whistled when he touched the ball. For the second time in his career, Luka Modrić was being called a failure, a mistake, too small for the biggest stage. But something happened in his second season. Manager Carlo Ancelotti arrived and believed in him, put him at the heart of midfield, built the team around him, and Luka blossomed, completely, utterly blossomed. He controlled matches like a conductor, saw passes others couldn't imagine, never lost the ball, dictated tempo, made one of the world's best teams even better. In 2014, Real Madrid won the Champions League, the 10th in their history, La Decima. Luka was central to everything they did. Then they won it again in 2016, and again in 2017, and again in 2018. 4 Champions League trophies in 5 years. Historic, unprecedented. And Luka Modrić was at the heart of it all. The fans who had protested his signing, now they chanted his name. The media who had doubted him, now they called him one of the best midfielders in the world. In 2018, everything culminated. Real Madrid won another Champions League. Luka captained Croatia to the World Cup final, their first ever, leading their tiny country of 4 million people further than they'd ever dreamed. Then came the ultimate vindication, the Ballon d'Or, the award for the world's best player. For 12 years, Lionel Messi and Cristiano Ronaldo had shared it. Nobody else even had a chance. Until Luka Modrić, the kid from the war zone, the refugee from Hotel Kolovare, the boy who was too small.
He won the Ballon d'Or. He stood on that stage in Paris holding the trophy, crying. Not tears of joy, though there was joy. Tears of relief. Tears of vindication. Tears for everyone who doubted him. Tears for his grandfather who never got to see this. He said, "They said I was too small to survive. I survived a war. They said I was too weak to succeed. I won everything. Never let anyone else's limitations become yours." Luka Modrić is 39 years old now, as of 2024. Still playing for Real Madrid. Still Croatia's captain. Still performing at the highest level when most players his age have retired. He's won 6 Champions League trophies, 5 Club World Cups, 4 La Liga titles, the Ballon d'Or, led Croatia to a World Cup final and a third-place finish. He's one of the most decorated midfielders in football history. But ask him what he's most proud of, and he'll talk about something else. About surviving. About proving doubters wrong. About representing Croatia, his country that was born in blood, but survived. "Everything I do," he said in an interview, "I do for Croatia, for my grandfather, for everyone who didn't survive the war. I play for them." He's never forgotten where he came from. The war, Hotel Kolovare, Modric, his grandfather. He carries it all with him every time he steps on the pitch. When Croatia plays, Luka doesn't just represent a team. He represents a generation that survived war, a country that rebuilt from ashes, a people who refused to give up. His story resonates because it's real. He's not a kid from a wealthy academy who became great. He's a refugee who became the best player in the world. He's a boy who lost his grandfather to violence, who grew up to captain his country to glory. People ask if winning the Ballon d'Or was my greatest achievement, Luka reflected. But my greatest achievement was surviving. Everything else is just extra. Luka Modric's story started in a war zone, in a refugee hotel, playing with a deflated ball on cracked concrete. It led through doubt, rejection, criticism, and constant questions about his size. But it ended with him holding every trophy football offers, proving that your circumstances don't define you, that being small doesn't mean you can't be great, that surviving makes you stronger than those who never had to fight. I am Luka Modrić. I survived war. I survived doubt. I survived everyone who said I couldn't. And I won everything.